Okay, hey everybody. I'm here today with Bev Jones and Karen Slote, and they're going to talk with you a little bit about what they do in the realm of wildlife rehabilitation. So I guess I'll just start by asking both of you just to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Sure.
So I'm Karen, and I'm a wildlife veterinarian. I've been a veterinarian for about 25 years, and I started in private practice because really that's the only way you can make enough money to pay off your vet school bills and your loans and things like that. So I worked in private practice for about 7 years, and then I moved on to shelter medicine, where I took care of mostly homeless dogs and cats, which was really neat. You move from, kind of being a vet for specifically for the people is more of a business, but I really wanted to do more for these animals that didn't have a home and things like that. So I was working at the shelter, um, and then that's where I found Bev, and I've always been interested in wildlife. And Bev said I could come and work in the wildlife department. So at the SPCA in Erie County, we actually have a wildlife department that's associated with our local animal shelter. And it's pretty huge. Right now, this year, we've seen over 3,500 animals in just the wildlife department alone. So right now I've moved on from even taking care of dogs and cats. So now I am just the wildlife veterinarian. It's only a part-time job, but I work taking care of any wildlife that the public finds that needs help. So I work there, and I'm also an at-home rehabilitator. So I take care of certain species at my house. I take care of bats and tiny birds and water birds like loons and grebes and things like that are a little bit more difficult for people to take care of at a center sometimes. So I'm completely immersed in the wildlife rehab world, and it never goes away. So that's what I do from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. So.
Wow. Okay, Bev.
Well, I'm going to give a little abbreviated version of who I am because I'm going to elaborate on my past in just a little bit. I am a wildlife veterinary technician. I've been a licensed veterinary technician for over 20 years, and I've been involved with wildlife rehabilitation for 35 years now. And again, I will talk about my past in a little bit. I'm also a nature educator, and I currently work part-time for Fight for Nature Center, which is located down in Olean, New York, which is about an hour and a half south of Buffalo. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of my experiences in this field with all of you. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for being here. All right, so I know you guys kind of divided up how you wanted to answer the questions. So I think it's Karen that we're going to ask to describe sort of a typical day in the wildlife rehab world.
So yeah, there's a lot going in the wildlife rehab world. It depends on the season too. Sometimes it's busier than others. But it's basically people out in the public, and they find a wild animal and they're not sure if it needs help or not. So it can be orphaned, so you can have a little baby bird hopping around on the ground, or one that's fallen out of the nest. Or you could have an animal that was hit by a car or shot by somebody, or any wild animal that seems to need help. So it starts with that, and the public calls the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. And the center will, so there's all sorts of jobs there. So if you're an at-home rehabilitator, you do all these jobs. If you're at a center, you can divide them up. So we have people that answer the phones, we have people that go pick up these animals, and then we have people that take in the animals and triage them and do the treatments and things like that. So it basically starts with the public finding animals that need help, and then we take them in and treat them. So it's, I guess from there, a lot of it is talking to people and telling them that a lot of these animals don't really need help, just to leave them alone. Little babies out there, a lot of times their mom may leave them for a little while and she's going to come back. So a lot of it, or people that just don't want an animal in their yard. So there's a lot of education involved in the initial talking to these people. But once the animals get into the hospital, you need to, treat their wounds, just basic medical stuff. The same thing you do in a small animal hospital, we do with these wild animals, except for they're wild and they're really scared of people, and you have to treat them a lot differently. They can hurt you just because they're scared. It's kind of like a feral cat sometimes, just really different and difficult to handle, and the stress level is a lot different. So we'll do things like x-rays, treating wounds, we do surgeries, pinning bones and things like that. In like the shelter, if you have an animal that has a crushed leg, you can amputate that leg and find it a home. But if you have a wild animal that has a broken wing, you can't just take the wing off because it won't be able to function in the wild. So our goal as wildlife rehabilitators is to get those animals back into perfect condition so they can be released. So it's a little bit more difficult. We need to make them perfect, and there's a lot more involved with all the different species that we have to take care of. So if you, I don't know, what kind of things do you think they'd like to know about? So I could talk about a lot of different things, but
yeah, well, one thing I think might be interesting for people to know just right off the bat, as you mentioned, at these, wildlife rehabilitation centers, there's all sorts of different jobs that people can split things up. Are those typically paid jobs, or are those typically volunteer types of things that people?
Yeah, at our center, most of them are volunteers. Last year, before the pandemic, we had over 100 volunteers there. So a lot of what's done with our few paid staff, which isn't very many. So we have like a hospital manager, and then we have a couple part-time, assistants that just take care of the animals there. So, but a lot of the work of those people that are paid is training the volunteers too. So most of the positions are not paid. And I actually didn't get paid for quite a while when I started working there either. So it's kind of like a labor of love in most cases. So if you're lucky, you get the paid position.
And I think a lot of people might be curious, for those of you who do rehab at home, how does that work? I'm assuming you have to have some kinds of special permits and licenses to do that. And
Yeah.
Who's paying for all the food for those animals and the cages or the equipment that you need? I think that would be something that people interested in that field might really want to know.
Yeah, unfortunately, you don't get paid in wildlife rehabilitation, and you cannot charge for any of the services you provide. So it's all based on donations. So unfortunately, a lot of times you actually end up spending more money of your own money, unless you can do a lot of education programs or do a lot of fundraising and get money for that. So it's really tough to do it in your home. These larger centers can do fundraising a little bit better, and that's one of the benefits of being a wildlife center within the SPCA, is because they already have a fundraising, a whole, I guess, group of people that do that, and they give some of the money to wildlife. But yes, in order to do wildlife rehabilitation in New York State, you do need to have a license. So you have to take a test and you have to get a license, and that will give you the ability to take care of these wild animals. And that actually, there's different licenses you can get. And you have to also have experience, and a lot of times working with a center is how you can get a lot of good experience. But there's the additional license you get. You can basically take care of most mammals, and you can take care of reptiles and amphibians. If you want to take care of migratory birds, you have to have the first license, and then you have to actually get more experience. You have to apply for a federal license, and then you can take care of migratory birds. I have a different kind of license to take care of what's called rabies vector species. So those are bats, skunks, or raccoons, and I take care of bats. But you need a very special license for those 3 species in New York State. There's a lot of extra rules. They come and inspect your house or your facilities, and it's just really tricky, and there's not a lot of people that have that. But I really like that, so I went and I did that. So, but yeah, there's a lot involved in it, and there's not, you don't get paid much, and a lot of times you're actually spending your own money in order to do this.
Yeah. So the reward comes from personal satisfaction.
Personal satisfaction, yeah. It's more of a, it's, I don't know what it is. I call it my sickness. So.
So I know that so that all the students watching this know, we kind of discussed how everybody was going to divide this up. So the normal question order will be a little different for this video. I think what we talked about next was Karen kind of moving to talking about what is the best part of this career for you, and what is the worst part of
So I always have to start with the worst part. So, but it's basically just to see all the awful things that we do to wildlife, because you see them coming in that are shot by people, that are run over by cars. Some turtles are run over by people on purpose, and you can tell because they're on the side of the road, and it's not a busy road, but there's a squashed turtle there that you go to rescue, and she's completely, eggs are scattered all over the road. So it's just really awful to see the things that people do to these animals. But I think that's part of my sickness. That's why I feel that I need to help them. It's not for any monetary gain. It's just to kind of compensate for all the bad that humans have done to them. And this is my small way of helping them out. So a lot of times the only way I can help them out is to just end their suffering and to give them a peaceful end out of this cruel world that we've created for them. But it is pretty satisfying to be able to get them back perfectly, get them back out into the world so they can be free again, so they can continue on with their lives. But yeah, it's mostly sickness.
So I'll go off script. What's I want to go back to the best part for a minute. That's amazing. What's the best release you've ever seen? What's your most amazing success release story?
Oh man, I don't even know. Well, see, I wasn't even there for it, and I told her to be for it. There was a turkey vulture, and it actually had a wing that was fractured and healed in a very, very crooked position. And me and another veterinarian actually got together, and we were able to re-break that bone, straighten it, and that bird actually flew away. So it's just kind of a neat thing like that. It's like, there's no way I can do this, and it actually worked. So it's like things like that you don't think are going to work, when they do, and you can watch that animal go back to where it belongs. It's really cool.
That's incredible. So I think we're going to switch back to Bev now. And I was going to ask either of you, but I think Bev was the one who's going to take this question, a little bit about what was your path like to get to this career?
Well, you're talking about paid positions, and I'm probably one of few that have been able to actually make a living doing wildlife rehabilitation, and not a huge living. And as my husband would say, which I think is pretty appropriate and cool, his job feeds the stomach while my job feeds the soul. Because it is a labor of love, and it's not one that you're going to get rich off from. So my recommendation is, if you're looking to have a lot of money in your life, that you marry a wealthy spouse. Then they can better support your your efforts. But that having been said, I'm going to go back to the beginning, only because we're talking about a career path. And when does your path start? Your path starts at birth, pretty much. And I grew up in a little country town on a dead-end road. My neighbors had a beautiful pond that I pretty much grew up in. So I've been out in nature my whole life. I love nature. Nature is such a part of me. And I think back to, how did I get started on this path of wildlife rehabilitation? And I remember being about 6 years old. My parents were packing up the car so we could go visit my grandmother, who lived a couple hours away. We were going to be gone for the weekend. And they're packing up the car, and I found this robin on the ground, and the robin couldn't fly. And so I said to my parents, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad, this little bird needs help. And they said, well, you know what, there's nothing we can do for it. Let nature take its course. We're just going to leave the robin there. and they're packing up the car. I remembered there was a rusty bird cage in our basement, and I thought, no, this is really not a safe place for this poor bird to be. So I took the bird, hid it into the basement in the bird cage. I went out, dug up a bunch of worms, and left it some food. And my plan was that when we came back from our trip, then I would give the bird more help. So I go away, I'm thinking about this bird the whole time I'm gone. We get home a few days later, and lo and behold, the bird is deceased in the bird cage. And I think that my entire life has been spent trying to make amends to that poor robin that I discovered and didn't find the appropriate help for. I was so guilt-ridden over that. Should I have left the bird? Did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? I was 6 years old. But I knew that something needed to be done for this bird, and I'm not going to, well, I guess I'll tell you how old I was. It was 40-some years ago. There wasn't this field available. There wasn't anybody to take this bird to. You know, this whole profession started with people just doing things in their own homes and doing the best they could and sharing their experiences and learning from the mistakes of others and things like that. So forward just a little bit, I'm now in high school, and I had the most wonderful opportunity to become a youth volunteer at the Ross Park Zoo. So I signed up to do that, and luck would have it that I was placed in their animal hospital with their veterinary technician. And so I got to help raise baby wolves and baby mountain lions, and, you know, help medicate animals and watch the veterinarian do surgery. And that was it for me. I knew that I wanted to be involved with wildlife. After that, the zoo also had a wildlife rehabilitation component. So not only did they have their zoo animals to care for, they took in native wildlife in need of help. So I would volunteer in their wildlife hospital also. And so again, I got to learn about what that field was all about. They discontinued the volunteer program at the same time they discontinued the wildlife rehabilitation program, but the zoo keeper that ran the wildlife hospital left the zoo and started her own facility called Southern Tier Wildlife. And it turns out she's Kelly, who is our president of the New York State Wildlife Rehabilitation Council, is one of my closest, dearest friends, and I've had a connection with her, again, for many years. and so I've always, you know, I had that facility to work with while I was in high school. So then it's time to go to college. So I attended the University of Buffalo, and I graduated with a degree in environmental science. And upon graduation, I went down to Naples, Florida, and I participated in an internship at their wildlife hospital. So this was a new experience for me because at Southern Tier Wildlife, I had years and years of experience of what home-based rehabilitation was all about, and, you know, the time, energy, resources it took to do 24/7 in your own home. Then I went to Florida, and I got to see what it was like to have a paid position in sorts. I mean, it was an internship, so it didn't pay a lot, but they gave you, you know, room and board. And I could see what it was like to go to work at 8 in the morning and do your work and then go home at the end of the day and then go back the next day. So I had both experiences, and that was really important for me to see the contrast between the two, because what I realized was that I wanted to do wildlife rehabilitation as a career, but not as a lifestyle. I could not do what Kelly did. I cannot do what Karen does. So that, again, was a very valuable experience for me. So after I finished my internship down in Florida, I had met a great friend, and we had decided that we would do another internship with the Peregrine Fund. I don't know if you folks have talked about the Peregrine Fund. They're based out in Boise, Idaho. And the Peregrine Fund was created to help bring the peregrine falcon back from the brink of extinction. So the Peregrine Fund did a lot of captive breeding of peregrines, and then they would reintroduce them back out into the wild. And it was important that they had hack site attendants, which was what my position was. And you would go out with a group of peregrine falcons. They'd be in a hack box. They're about 6 weeks of age. They're just learning how to fly. You would feed them in the box for a week. Then you open the box, you let the birds come out, and you supplement them every day for a month with food as they're getting the lay of the land and building up their flight muscles. And then it goes to every other day and every few days. So again, the hacking process, which is to gradually reintroduce them to the wild. So we were in Mount Hood, Oregon for a summer and had such an incredible time with that experience that my friend, her name also happens to be Kelly, and I did 2 other internships with the Peregrine Fund. The next year we went to Bozeman, Montana to work with peregrines again. And then a couple years later, we went down to Texas to Matagorda Island and worked with Apalado falcons. So that was a really cool thing for me to do because that was a connection to what a wildlife biologist might do, you know, that kind of aspect of that work. So all of those experiences were really, really cool. But at the end of that, you know, I was still looking at what's my lifelong passion here? Oh yeah, that's right. My goal is to get paid doing wildlife rehabilitation. And I thought, well, my degree doesn't really give me a direct connection to animal care. So I had decided that I would go back to school. And so I went to Medaille College and graduated with a degree in veterinary technology. And while I was at Medaille, I started volunteering at the SPCA in their wildlife department. And it is one of those things where, you know, you happen to be in the right place at the right time. I volunteered on Sunday morning, so I didn't see a whole lot of other staff folks, but I was cleaning a cage one Sunday morning and I overheard a conversation between a staff member and a volunteer that they were looking for somebody to fill a position in the wildlife department. And I stuck my head out of the cage that I was cleaning and I said, "Excuse me, am I understanding you correctly? You have a position available here?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Holy cow, that's like my whole purpose in life here is to get a job doing this." So I interviewed for the position, and long story short, I was their wildlife hospital manager full-time for 16 years, which was just an amazing job. I met Karen, so many wonderful volunteers. I met Robin through the SPCA. So that was just simply amazing. And life changes a little bit sometimes, and my husband decided it was time for him to pursue a new career, so he applied for a position in Olean, which had us move from Buffalo to Olean. I tried for several years to work full-time for the SPCA while living in Olean, and I said, that's not working so well. not feeling connected to either place. So then I went down to part-time, and because I was working part-time, that gave me half my time free. So I was like, well, what else do I love to do? Oh, that's right, nature. I love nature. So I found out that there was a position available as a nature program coordinator for Pfeiffer Nature Center. So I thought, that's cool. I'll do that. That'll supplement, my work. And I took that job on and did both jobs for a few years. But then I found it to be very, very challenging because of the fact that the busy season for the wildlife hospital, as Karen had explained, is the summertime. The busy season for the nature center is the summertime, because that's when you're doing all the summer programs for kids and things like that. And I was having a lot of conflict. I couldn't take time off from either to help, one or the other out when they needed extra help. So that was hard in the summer, and in the wintertime, there's always that drive, trying to go from Olean to Buffalo and getting the snow belt. So I thought, this just isn't working. So I had to give something up, and so I resigned my position through the SPCA, but still am connected. I'm on the board of directors for the New York State Wildlife Rehabilitation Council. I'm still connected with Karen, and we're going to talk about that in another question coming up. But that sort of gives you my career path, which really has been amazing.
Yeah, I'm still jealous of your Apalado falcon.
One of the coolest things though about being down there with the Apalado falcons, and so the terrain is much different. You're in Texas, it's completely flat. And so they had a huge problem with caracara coming down and stealing the quail off the tops of the hack boxes for the Apalamados. And it got really bad to the point where, we couldn't be putting food up fast enough. The caracara would take the food off as soon as you put it on for the falcons. But Matagorda Island had a problem with feral pigs. There were a lot of feral pigs running around. So I spoke with the folks at the Peregrine Fund, and I said, is there any chance someone could come out, maybe dispatch a few of these pigs, you know, just to keep the Cara busy for a while so we could feed our peregrines, because it was really hard running back and forth in, you know, 110-degree heat to try to put food up on a box that wasn't staying for longer than 30 seconds. And so they thought, well, we've never done that before. Is that interfering with nature? And how is it interfering any more than us hand feeding birds? But they decided to do that. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service came out and they dispatched a few pigs, which the Cara were thrilled over, and it actually saved the project that summer. So
Wow.
That was just kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. Good idea. Okay, so what question was I supposed to ask you guys next? I think we're going to go with, what advice do you have for students who might be interested in this as a career path?
That's my question. I'm going to continue to prattle on a little bit. But with my career path, I think, you know, some of it was an element of luck. It was luck that I woke up one summer morning trying to decide what I was going to do with my day when I was in high school. I just happened to turn on the radio and there was an advertisement for the volunteer positions at the Ross Park Zoo. So I wrote the number down, I called them right up, and I got into that. It was an element of luck that when I was at UB and I was taking a study break at the library, that I looked over and I saw the Student Conservation Association's internship book. I opened the book right to the page of the conservancy in Southwest Florida that was looking for internships. It was luck that when we moved to Olean, my next door neighbors who'd become best friends of ours, my friend Pam was on the board of directors for Pfeiffer Nature Center and told me they were looking for you know, someone to fill that naturalist position. So that was all luck. But at the same time, I have to say that a lot of it was positioning myself for future opportunities. If I hadn't been at the zoo, I would not have found out about Southern Tier Wildlife. If I hadn't found out about Southern Tier Wildlife, I probably wouldn't have gotten this involved in wildlife rehabilitation. If I hadn't been at the zoo at the time, when they discontinued the volunteer program, I would not have become friends with the zoo veterinarian who hired me in her private practice, which is how I put myself through high school and through college, and even for years after that. If I hadn't been at the Conservancy, I wouldn't have met an intern who had done some work for the Peregrine Fund. I wouldn't have found out about that program, so I wouldn't have done the Peregrine Fund. And if I hadn't been volunteering at the SPCA, I wouldn't have stuck my head out of the cage to you know, beg a position from them. So what I wanted to share based on my past is that there are so many volunteer and internships available out there for students. And I understand it's really hard. And I understand you could say, but I've got these student loans to pay off. And yes, they're greater than my student loans were at the time, but I had huge student loans. And when I went down to Florida, I had to clean condominiums and clean office buildings and work at a bagel shop to supplement what I was doing at the Nature Center. But it meant that much to me. And it can be hard to do these internships because they don't pay a lot, but the experience will pay off for you 1,000 times fold, because it's not always what you know. It's a lot of times being in the right place at the right time, and the connections you make. That's my other very important recommendation is you're gonna meet people, and some of these people you should put the extra effort into maintaining a relationship with. I value my relationship with Robin so much, and we now work together on different things. And Robin has brought Canisius students down to Pfeiffer Nature Center, which is so great for the Nature Center. And it's so great for me. And I had the most amazing experience of being able to go to Belize with the ABEC students a year and a half ago. And so these things just continue to build on one another. So create those relationships, foster those relationships, keep in touch with people. Karen is one of my most dearest, bestest friends in the whole world. And she's a treasure to me. And I've got a lot of friends like that. So anyway, that's my answer. And I'm sticking to it.
I think that's a good answer. I think, you know, and I think we've heard that in a lot of the interviews that we've done for this course, that it's just really important to set yourself up for networking opportunities, ways to get experience, and maybe even more important than that, ways to get to know people who can help you move to the next experience, and who hopefully you can be resources for each other for a long time to come. So I think that's fantastic advice. So I think we decided we're ending up with the last question. where do you see yourselves in a few years, say in 5 years or so?
Well, this question's, it's going to have a joint answer to it. I'll start and Karen's going to elaborate. But one of the really cool things that Karen and I are working on right now is that we are the proud founders of an organization called Wild Care of Western New York. Karen's worked really hard with another friend, Amanda, to create a website for us, so you can find us. Karen does all kinds of really cool social media stuff. I think everybody should get on it and take a look to see what we're up to. We're doing this with another friend, Veronica, who is also a volunteer from the SPCA. So we're creating this nonprofit organization. And what Karen and I and Veronica have learned over our 20 years of working at the SPCA is it's really difficult to be a facility that takes in all species. The SPCA takes in over 100 different species of animals, and that's great, except it puts constraints on things and it can make it really challenging. And so what we think works better for wildlife rehabilitation, or works really well, especially for home-based rehabilitators, maybe not so much for center-based. Center-based, again, they've got more resources, they can have more facilities, but really find what it is that you connect to with wildlife. Find your passion, find your 1 or 2 animals, learn everything there is to know about those 1 or 2 species of animals, or however many you can adequately do. Talk to people that do those species of animals, build the best enclosure you can, work on the best enrichment that you can for those animals. And that's what we're going to do. And we're following through with Karen's passions, which are bats. There are not a lot of bat rehabilitators in New York State, and we know how crucial bats are to the environment, and we know that bats are in trouble right now. We're also going to focus on loons and diving birds, and those animals too have very specific needs. And we're also going to focus on hummingbirds and aerial insectivorous songbirds that are difficult to rehabilitate in captivity, like swifts and swallows. All of those species of animals have their challenges because of the care they need, but they also have challenges because they are going to be most significantly impacted by climate change that's happening. And so Karen, Veronica, and I realized that while taking care of the individual animal is really important and crucial work, there's also the bigger picture to be considered. If we don't protect the habitat and we spend all of our energy healing these animals or raising the animals, we put them back out into an environment that's not going to support them. Really, what's the purpose of some of that? So we want to do an all-encompassing kind of center where we're going to have a rehabilitation component. We're going to have a nature restoration and protection component, and we're going to have also a nature education component. And this is exciting for us because we have interests in so much more than just the rehab component. So we're going to be able to learn a whole lot more and share a whole lot more with what people can do to help the environment, to help nature, to help restore biodiversity. We're going to have conversations with people so people can understand, and the field that you guys are pursuing right now, you largely do understand the interconnectedness of all species on this planet and how we have to save the wild places to save ourselves, which is the conversations that we're hearing a lot right now, especially if you just watched David Attenborough's A Life on This Planet movie. But that's really cool stuff. Because right now, I'm going to shift to Karen, because Karen had mentioned about how she's doing wild care out of her home. So Karen, tell us what you would rather see in 5 years rather than working out of your kitchen, basement, spare bedrooms, and things like that.
I don't know. It seems to be taking a long time, so I figure I'm still going to be here. But you pretty much have said it all. So you can be our spokesperson. I just take care of the bats and the tiny birds and things. So. But right now I'm just because I don't know when we're going to get a piece of land. Apparently it's really hard to find a wonderful place to be that's not my house. So right now I'm just accommodating for what we can do until that point. But yeah, I and during busy season, what I do here basically is wake up and feed the animals and take care of the animals. I do surgery on the animals in my basement. And it's I do all the flight training. I build all their enclosures. So it's just a strange life that I've created for myself. But Bev will be our spokesperson. She's much better at speaking, and I take care of the animals right now. So that's what I do.
Well, and Karen does it amazingly well, which is what makes this a really unique opportunity for all of us. And one of my live streams is to separate Karen's to some extent, her 24/7 home life with having a facility though that will have volunteers, folks. Just we'll be taking volunteers. And having folks come in to help us support these animals, to give Karen an opportunity to do some other things like go kayaking and watching loons and things like that, things she doesn't get to do very often because she's taking these animals on. But our vision is to create a green facility on some property. Veronica and her husband are helping us to look for a place to call home. And we would like to put some greenhouses on it. We'd like to put an arboretum on it. We want to involve Robin. We'd like to do, conversations about wetland restoration if there's wetlands on it, citizen science projects, all kinds of really cool stuff. And we just, we call it Utopia Land, but it's sort of meant to be a place to heal not only nature, but to heal ourselves. A place where we can go and say, hopefully the world will be moving in the right direction. Hopefully we'll be healing the planet. But it's hard to do a lot outside of your own sphere of influence, right? Your own world. So we want to do the best we can and share locally, and then consider the global picture at the same time.
That's incredible. That's an amazing goal, an incredible dream, and I really hope to get to be a part of it. And I think it sounds like something that down the road could be a great opportunity for some Canisius ABEC students to get involved in a really cool.
Well, and that's a cool point. Veronica works at Canisius. And that's something that Veronica is very connected to, which is the nature education component, connecting with people and creating internships for college students and things like that. So that is in our 5-year plan too.
Well, that's fantastic.
5 years, huh?
Well, if when we finish up, if at some point you want to send me a link to the website, so I didn't realize you guys had a website yet, I can put it up for the students and they can get on there and check it out and watch your progress and anxiously await the opportunity to come and volunteer for you someday or intern with you someday.
And I think there's a couple of pictures that Karen had sent to you. If you wanted to pop up a couple of pictures, some of them are animals that Karen's recently worked on at the SPCA, and some are animals that she takes care of for wild care out of her home.
All right, so here we go. I'll show you. So we have, I don't think it'll let me go all the way into the slideshow, but so can you see them?
Yes.
Okay.
These are just a couple animals. The first two are a couple that we've been taking care of in the past week or so at the shelter. And this is a turkey vulture with a broken wing, and it was shattered in many pieces. Bones were sticking out, and it's one of those where no way this is ever going to work. But it's been about 3 weeks, and he's doing really well. I'm going to go back in tomorrow and see if we could take some of those pins out. But that's just one really cool thing you could do at the center, where like I can't do this in my basement. So you could do amazing things, pretty much the same kind of things you can do with dogs and cats medically. And here's a crow that we just saw, really anemic. We weren't sure why. Sometimes they'll get malaria or get into poison and have blood loss and things like that. But we actually were able, we had another crow. We took blood from the other crow, and we were giving this guy a blood transfusion. He's not under anesthesia. He's just that weak. He didn't really move really well. So we're hoping this guy does well, but still pretty touch and go on that one.
So Karen, I have to ask, do crows have blood types that you have to match before you do a transfusion?
The first time you do it, you don't have to. It's the second time that there could be a problem. We gave this guy some Benadryl ahead of time, and you want to get, luckily we had another species, another crow. So If you use the same species, you're less likely to have a reaction to that. But we don't do this very often. This was a really cool thing for us. So it was really, really difficult. And the next pictures are all pretty much from my home. This is a bat. This is a hoary bat, New York State's largest bat. It's a tree bat, and they migrate. Just wanted to show the cuteness of the bat, because people don't always think that bats are cute, but they're freaking adorable. So
They are super cute.
And this is a big brown bat that came to me. It actually traveled all the way up from Jamestown. I picked it up in Fredonia, brought it back here. Some people really love bats, and I love people that really love bats. That these people really cared a lot about this. It went to another bat biologist who took it until I could get to his house. So, and the bone is sticking out. It looked dead. It's like, oh, there's no way. This bat also had a ruptured lung, and it was full of air. It just looked like a freaking balloon, and it couldn't breathe really well. So it's like, oh, there's no way this bat's surviving. But I put it in oxygen. I put this tiny little pin, which is just a hypodermic needle, and I fixed its fracture, and he's doing really well. His name is Bruce Wayne. He's a really cool bat.
That's incredible.
So, and I see, hummingbirds are really hard to take care of. You can't put two of them together; they'll kill each other and fight and things like that. So it's something that's really hard to take care of at a center. So this is something that I do at my house. This was one of my babies this year. So it's a little baby boy hummingbird. And they're pretty adorable too. But they just wanted to let everybody know, if you ever get a hummingbird, you can feed them sugar water, but that's not all they eat. They're actually insectivorous birds. They're related to swifts, and they eat a lot of insects. So they don't just eat sugar water, as some rehabilitators think they do. And they get really sick if you just feed them that. So just a little public service announcement.
I think that's your last picture that you gave us here.
This is my, I don't know, just about my favorite animal besides the bats is loons. And we don't get a lot of them in Buffalo, and I'm like loon deprived. Once I met loons in the Adirondacks, it's like, these are just the coolest birds ever. But we do get them that migrate through our area. And they're really hard to take care of. I mean, if you get one and it's fine, you could put it back on the water. Once they're on the ground, they can't get up, and they're just going to die there unless somebody finds them, which is really, really sad, because sometimes you just need to get them back to the water. A lot of these I get that aren't quite ready to go back to the water, and they're hard to maintain. You have to keep them in a tub where the water's constantly overflowing. If they get grease on their feathers, their waterproofing goes away. And these birds have like a wetsuit. Their feathers keep them completely dry when they're in the water. So if you mess up that waterproofing, they're going to go down and they're going to freeze. So that's why these guys are so hard. If you get them dirty, it might be a death sentence for them. So even though we don't get a lot of them here, one year we did. Mostly we just get a couple. It's something you really need to know how to take care of them properly. So that's what I do in my backyard, and my husband hates it because the water constantly overflowing into my backyard doesn't make for a nice backyard. But so,
Wow.
But it'd be nice to have a place that wasn't my backyard to put the loons.
Yeah, I bet. Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk with us and share your thoughts and experiences about this. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. It was
thanks.
great fun. Great to see you.